Hello again, everyone, and thank you, Anne, for moderating that crucially important conversation on COVID-19. We are nearing the conclusion of our two-day conference, and in a moment, I'm going to introduce our last two keynote speakers. But before doing so, I wanted to say how happy and proud I am to be the chair of SID Washington's board. The conference has surpassed my high expectations as a great forum for the international development community to meet and exchange ideas. We've had more than 1,000 participants from more than 60 countries and have discussed topics that are of great interest to all of us. So I want to express my deep appreciation to the conference co-chairs, Ann Simmons-Benton and John Glover, and to SID's president, Catherine Rafelson, and the entire hardworking SID Washington staff. So now let me introduce the first of our closing plenary speakers, Paul Polman. Paul Polman is, of course, well known to many of us in the international development community and to SID in particular. In fact, in 2019, SID Washington honored him with our award for outstanding leadership in international development, and he attended our annual dinner where he made inspiring remarks. Paul served for 10 years as the CEO of Unilever, where he was globally recognized for his work in sustainability. He has long been a champion of corporate social responsibility, urging business leaders to accelerate their efforts and rallying the private sector around social justice issues. In 2016, he was selected by former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to be an SDG advocate. He was tasked with helping to build widespread support for the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, and he was appointed again in 2019 to that role by current Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Paul co-founded Imagine in 2019. Imagine is a social venture dedicated to accelerating business leadership to achieve the global goals. Paul is an evangelist on topics like inequality, climate change, and the gaps exposed by the pandemic. So, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Polman.
Well, hello, everybody. First, I'd like to thank Catherine, Wade, Anne, John, and the Society for International Development, Washington Community, for the enormous opportunity to join you today. It's great to be with you again, as I have fond memories of the annual dinner in December 2019, when I was presented with the award for outstanding leadership in international development. It was then, and certainly remains, a great honor for which I'm immensely proud. Thank you again for that recognition. International development, without any doubt, is under stress. The COVID pandemic is a health and economic crisis like no other that has dramatically impacted both lives and livelihoods. We all see on television that India is suffering enormously today. Tomorrow, it might be Africa. Our hearts go out to those affected. It is clear that no one is safe until everyone is safe. Many other countries are impacted as well. COVID has clearly weighed also heavily on the international development. The global economy contracted by about 4%. Over $28 trillion lost in output, $16 trillion spent just to save lives and livelihoods. That's the real cost of failure. It has led to huge budget deficits and public debts, and subsequent cuts in bilateral overseas aid. Take, for example, the UK government's $5 billion annual cut, which is regrettable. It has resulted in declining trade and foreign investment, and once more, the young, the poor, the women, and the informal workers have been disproportionately affected. 124 million people pushed back in extreme poverty, 250 billion projected by 2030. The first ever decline in the Human Development Index, plus rising protectionism and vaccine nationalism, which could cost the global economy over $9 trillion. We need at least 10 years of growth to get back to where we were before the crisis. So no question that these are challenging times for international development. A broken system. Actually, we already saw the signs of a failing system before the crisis. The current economic model was neither sustainable nor inclusive. And we failed to address this, regretfully, during the financial crisis. The main international development issues that we should focus on are climate change and inequality as a priority. On climate, we've seen high levels of overconsumption pushing the planetary boundaries. World Overshoot Day last year was August 27th, which is the day that we use up all the resources the world can replenish that year. In other words, after that date, you're actually stealing from future generations. Only 9% of all the materials we use are used more than once. People are starting to discover that we cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet, and anything you can do infinitely by definition is unsustainable. Nature has seen a shocking 68% decline on average in mammals, fish, birds, reptiles, and amphibian population in the last 5 decades. Some call it the 6th greatest extinction. We've cut down half of the world's rainforests and could cross the global threshold of warming of 1.5 degrees by 2027 already. Yes, we do need to halve global emissions over the next 10 years. Otherwise, we're in danger of systems collapsing and getting into negative feedback loops. Now, inequality is not getting better either. We're leaving still too many behind. 4.3 billion people still live on less than $5 a day. Workers have lost $3.7 trillion in earnings during the crisis. Billionaires, on the other hand, have made $3.9 trillion during the pandemic. That's enough to vaccinate the whole world, ensure that nobody goes to bed hungry, and all children are in school. And yet we have still 1.6 billion vulnerable workers and 800 million people going to bed hungry, not even knowing if they wake up the next day. And yes, children, women and girls paying disproportionate prices. It is time to reinvent growth and build back better. I believe that the pandemic gives us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to redesign together, build on common values, shared interest, and inclusive prosperity. And the SDGs provide an ideal blueprint, potentially unlocking by 2030 at least $12 trillion in value and creating 380 million jobs. That's an enormous opportunity, especially as the cost of action is now far less than the cost of inaction. The incremental cost, for example, of achieving all of the Sustainable Development Goals is estimated at only $3 to $4 trillion more a year, whereas the government now spends $8 to $10 trillion on conflict prevention and wars across the world, incurs $5 trillion or more on the effects of climate change already, and just spent $16 trillion, as I mentioned, on dealing with the COVID crisis. Delivering the SDGs would be transformational, both for people and for planet. And for that, unlocking finance is key. And blended finance is a good example of how to accelerate progress. Commercial capital that contributes to the sustainable development whilst providing a decent financial return to investors. It helps grow the total amount of resources available to developing countries, complementing their own all too small investments and ODA to fill their SDG financing gap. We're starting to see highly innovative approaches to help us accelerate impact. We also need to turbocharge the contributions of the MDBs, which can play a key role here as well. Scaling up support for a green recovery, driving towards net zero emissions and climate adaptation and resilience. And yes, fighting the so important loss of biodiversity. All of this can be achieved. It can be achieved through an accelerated International Development Association replenishment in 2021, more effective use of the MDB's balance sheets, enhanced private sector finance mobilization, and all of that by accelerating alignment with the Paris agreements. And proactive MDB capital can increase with a requirement to work better together. Finally, let me end with a word on partnership. Strategic partnership, that is. I believe that this point is critical and applicable across the board. We urgently need to work together in unprecedented collaboration. Collaboration where we put the interest of the common good ahead of our own. And the SDG 17 is critical in allowing us to move at speed and scale. Government, business groups, NGOs, civil society, academia, all partnering to level their individual strengths for collective action. I'm on the board of the Rockefeller Foundation, for example, where we're working on the Sustainable Energy Coalition. It aims to bring reliable and sustainable electricity powered by renewable technology to over 1 billion people by 2030. Great partnership. Another partnership is needed to repair our broken food and land use systems. Another example where cooperation is desperately needed. Governments need to reform their public policies and procurement systems. Business needs to modernize their value chain by moving to regenerative agriculture and enhancing, above all, the livelihoods of the many smallholder farmers still living in too much poverty. Investing in nature-based solutions is an economic win as well for the COVID recovery, including the restoration of degraded landscapes. For example, for every $1 invested in restoration, people can receive between $7 and $30 of economic benefit. Leveraging major public works to generate rural jobs that restore degraded ecosystems and increase the climate resilience, and then linking economic support with environmental management is the way to go. I've seen a great example of that in Ethiopia to show you what's possible. Deploying nature-based solutions to improve water resources and create jobs, generating new streams of wealth for over 150,000 households, and enhancing the health of rural women and girls, and building at the same time climate resilience. We cannot achieve all these goals without the active partnership with the private sector. It has a crucial role to play. Net positive companies that give more than they take will be the winners. Companies can bring a range of skills and capabilities that can help governments, both in developing as well as developed countries. For example, at Unilever, we actively gave tax training to inspectors in Colombia, Nigeria, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and elsewhere. It helps these countries create better tax systems, one that is badly needed, as you want to have a broader and more efficient tax base to collect what is owed so you can invest in development. We need to create a self-fulfilling ambition loop for bigger and bolder public-private partnerships. Top priority in all of this, once more, must be tackling global warming. We need to avoid the unmanageable, which is the 1.5 degrees, and manage the unavoidable with resilience. Again, developing countries and the poor are our primary focus. It is critical that rich countries provide therefore the poorer nations with climate finance, which they have pledged under the Paris Agreement. It is good to see that the US has committed to double its annual climate finance for developing countries by 2024 to $5.7 billion per year. But right now the goal to mobilize the $100 billion annually is way off track. Not a large sum, you might say, but important symbolically nevertheless, as it telegraphs trustworthiness, that the rich world is committed in helping the poor world. Indeed, developing countries susceptible to climate-related hazards such as heat waves, droughts, floods, cyclones have made clear that if the COP26 fails to address finance for loss and damages or assistance to the victims of climate change, they will consider it to be a failure. That's why the G7 needs to act now by providing the necessary funds, completely distinct from financing, adaptation, and resilience. I believe that this is an absolute imperative for a just and inclusive transition. Similarly, it's not enough for rich countries simply to set targets for greenhouse gas cuts. We need to show actually how we get there, and 2030 targets with clear action plans are key. Important structural policies are urgently needed. Policies like building climate resilience and environmental protection into all development policies. The rapid phase out of fossil fuel subsidies, totaling hundreds of billions of dollars a year. And ramping up the price of what companies pay for carbon pollution. Corporate disclosure of exposure to climate risk, currently done on a voluntary basis, should also become mandatory. We all must make the COP26 a success, especially as there is no plan B. Finally, despite the challenges ahead, I believe that we should feel optimistic about the future. The international development community is one of the most revered in the world, full of deep expertise, passion, and commitment, which increasingly can turn to the private sector as a willing partner. Plus, we now have an abundance of money in the world and frankly enough technology available, as well as some positive enablers that have come out of the pandemic, such as, for example, the re-establishment that science is valued and values are restored, a heightened realization how much our well-being depends on proactive governments, a deeper understanding that human and planetary health are connected, a notion that if we work together, things can be done quickly, and a renewed appreciation, especially at the grassroots levels, of social solidarity. Thankfully, the stars are starting to align. This is a crucial year of delivery and a decade of action. The G7 and G20 meetings, the UN Biodiversity Conference, and the COP26 in Glasgow, all in 2021. Hopefully, the rebirth of multilateralism, the foundation of international development. It will be the test of our collective determination, that together we can carve a better future. That's a test that we don't want to fail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, for those very welcome and wise thoughts on the challenges and opportunities that we face as we strive toward the Sustainable Development Goals. I appreciate your optimism. Next, I'd like to say a few words to introduce Congressman Joaquin Castro. After Congressman Castro speaks, John Glover and Ann Simmons-Benton will take the floor to offer concluding remarks to the conference and to announce our Innovation Contest winners. So please stay tuned for that. Congressman Joaquin Castro is the 5-term representative of the 20th Congressional District of Texas, which includes San Antonio. We've invited him to speak this afternoon in his capacity as chairman of the newly formed House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on International Development, International Organizations, and Global Corporate Social Impact. The first hearing of his subcommittee, held in March, focused on COVID-19's impact on global development and how the U.S. international development institutions and workforce need to adapt and rebuild in the post-COVID world. Chairman Castro is going to talk to us this afternoon about his vision for his subcommittee and the issues it seeks to address, including COVID-19, climate change, diversity, equity, and inclusion, technology and innovation, and even the budget for foreign assistance. The international development community is very fortunate to have an advocate of Chairman Castro's passion and knowledge in this new important congressional leadership position. He is well suited to deliver our final keynote remarks. So over to you, Congressman Castro.
Thank you, Wade, for that generous introduction. I also want to thank Catherine Rafelson for her leadership with the Society for International Development's DC chapter and for putting this conference together. I'm Joaquin Castro, and I serve as chair of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on International Development, International Organizations, and Global Social Corporate Impact. This is a new subcommittee that was just created this Congress, and I hope that it'll be a place where the Congress will hold important discussions about how the United States leads on international development, discussions with the administration, with experts, and with the civil society organizations that are critical pillars of our infrastructure of diplomacy and development. It'll also inform oversight over the administration's development programs and legislation that the members of the subcommittee author to guide development policy. As the discussions during this conference have demonstrated, there are monumental challenges the development community faces. The immediate crisis of COVID-19 will rightly dominate our work, but we also cannot take our eye off the continuing crisis of climate change. The discussions this week on equity, the need for diversity and inclusion at USAID and in our development work are part of our national reckoning on race. The panels and breakout sessions on technology and innovation are critical at a time when the United States must reinvent itself in a changing world, whether to take on the China challenge or reinforce the enduring strength of our democracy. On any of these issues and so many more, we see how our international development work is a reflection of our national character and priorities. Development is an indispensable part of our foreign policy toolkit, and I'm proud to say that I'll do everything in my power in Congress to ensure it remains that way. Of course, the Society for International Development is already thinking ahead by holding this conference to investigate these very issues. For over 60 years, you've provided grassroots energy and a global network for organizing around the world's most pressing challenges. Your ability to bring together different stakeholders in this field is truly unique, and I'd argue it's essential to the work that we do in Congress. International development is not about any one committee or organization, but the collective efforts of thousands of people and groups who are all committed to shared goals. And I'm honored to be part of this critical work with you. Today, COVID-19 remains the most urgent challenge in the world. We know that we cannot truly defeat COVID-19 here at home until we defeat the virus abroad as well. The American people will not be safe from variants if the virus continues to run rampant worldwide. Vaccinating the world will require strong United States leadership. As I've said for months, the United States of America must become the vaccine arsenal of democracy. Congress has stepped up to take this issue on, approximating $4 billion to COVAX, which makes the United States by far the largest donor, and billions more for the Global Fund and to address the development impacts of COVID-19. But we must do more. The United States is projected to have between 500 million and 1 billion excess vaccines. We must use these to help bring the pandemic to heel. In addition to allowing other nations to access U.S. vaccine technology and manufacture their own versions of American vaccines, the United States should commit itself to continuing mass vaccine production until the coronavirus is absolutely defeated. The United States has the industrial capacity to manufacture enough vaccines for all Americans and a substantial amount of what is needed for the rest of the world. Just as the United States once produced the planes and tanks for every allied nation in the fight against fascism, we can do the same with vaccines in this battle against COVID. As you all know, vaccinating against COVID is an important measure, but it's not a silver bullet. For the first time in 2 decades, extreme global poverty increased last year, and although we were already behind on meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the pandemic has put those milestones even further out of reach. That's why the first hearing I held as subcommittee chair was on the development setbacks we faced as a result of this pandemic. It's clear that the United States will have to set up its international development efforts like never before, and that includes Congress. The American Rescue Plan that was signed into law in March includes $10 billion for humanitarian assistance, and more help is on its way. The Biden administration's budget request calls for a 12% increase in funding for the State Department and USAID. I will work with my colleagues in Congress to ensure our international development programs receive the financial support that they need and they deserve. But, as you know, international development is not just about how much money we spend, but what we invest in. For years, I've championed the cause of promoting innovation at USAID and other foreign assistance programs. The discussions during this conference on the role of the private sector in promoting the use of technology and innovation are timely. Even with the greater resources that the United States will commit to development, we're far from truly bridging the development gap the pandemic has brought about. Only by making our programs more effective and by integrating innovation and new techniques in our development work can we have any hope of meeting the challenge. The new administration is now engaging with the outcomes of Ambassador Mark Green's reorganization of USAID, including the creation of the new Bureau for Development, Democracy, and Innovation. As the senior leadership of USAID gets in place, they'll have to decide which initiatives to continue and which ones deserve a fresh look and a new direction. As they make these decisions, I'll be pushing to ensure that innovation is not just an afterthought, but fully integrated into our development programs. And ultimately, that innovation will help us get more bang for our buck and better development outcomes. There are, of course, other challenges that the administration faces that Congress will be keeping a close eye on. That includes strengthening the role of development finance within our broader development strategy and finding the right balance between the development mandate of the DFC and the foreign policy missions it has often been tasked with since its creation. We'll also have to get the Peace Corps back into the field after the disruptions of the pandemic and consider where the Millennium Challenge Corporation will expand with new compacts. If we're going to meet our responsibilities from the pandemic and global hunger to climate change and migration, we're going to need strong United States leadership. This begins at home with rebuilding our infrastructure for diplomacy and development. These challenges before us are enormous, but I believe between government and the organizations you represent, along with groups like the Society for International Development, we're up to that challenge. Thank you so much for your hard work. Please reach out to my office anytime we can be helpful. Take care, y'all.
Thank you, Representative Castro, for those very appropriate closing remarks, summarizing, I think, the conference themes that we've been talking about the past 2 days of COVID, climate change, the importance of equity, especially including diversity, equity, and inclusion, private sector engagement, and of course, the use of technology and innovation to address these systemic changes that we need to bring about. And I think this year has certainly brought about a increased understanding of the importance of equitable access to technology as well. And with that, I'm also very pleased to announce the final results of our final round of the innovation competition. As many of you may know, we invited all of our institutional members to pitch their innovative products or services via a video and a slide deck. A panel of judges was picked consisting of 5 finalists in round 1. And then we featured these innovations in our innovation showcase, which you can get in your ideas library. We then asked the 3 judges to pick the winner in round 2 during the conference. And our round 2 judges were Nick Martin, who is the founder and CEO of Tech Change, Jonathan Ung, who's the Innovation Division Lead at USAID, and Jennifer Pham, Community Lead at UN Leash. And so the votes are in. Winner, as voted by 2 rounds of judging, and my apologies if I don't get the pronunciation correct, is Vikurzi Zemli by Chemonics. Congratulations on that contribution to international development. And then by popular vote, we have Hello Juby, created by Apt Associates. So we are very pleased to congratulate both of those winners and appreciate their contributions to enhancing the use of innovation in development. And Anne, I will turn over to you to.
Thank you, John. You know, I have to tell you, I am really sad to close this great set of conversations. But on behalf of Sid Washington, I want to thank everyone for coming. I actually have updated numbers than Wade mentioned a few minutes ago. So we've had 1,300 registrants, over 1,000 participants at any given time from over 64 countries. That has made all our discussions so much richer. Thanks to our sponsors, moderators, and facilitators. Thanks to the SID Washington 2021 Annual Conference Committee and my co-chair, John. Thank the SID Washington staff And also thank you to Nick Martin and Tech Change for facilitating this virtual exchange. We'd like you to go to the homepage and complete the survey. Why one more survey? No, we really pay attention to the survey. The SID staff looks at it, the board looks at it, we plan our conference and all our events. So really, we need your help in figuring out how to go further. I hope one of the many ideas from the numerous panels and events resonated with you, and you will take action to address equity and impact. Radical collaboration, listen, empower others, listen to youth. DEI is not just HR, it is core to everything we do, and the urgency is now, and more. So many, many wonderful ideas. Reflect, be bold, nurture each other, and take action for equity and impact. And now to close, we have one last final inspirational lightning talk winner to show you. It is Caroline HADDAD from BLUMONT on Opportunity Starts at Home. Thank you.
Hi, I am Caroline HADDAD, BLUMONT's Jordan Country Director. Born and raised in Jordan, I know all about the challenges women face when joining the workforce and earning a living. I am here today to tell you a story of two strong women who, through BLUMONT's support, were able to overcome some of these challenges to make a difference in not only their lives, but the lives of their children. When Ola was a young girl growing up in Jordan, her mother taught her to sew HADDAD. HADDAD is a process of tasseling the sides of the kufi, the traditional scarves from Jordan and Palestine. The tassels add a personal touch, and Ola took pride in seeing her work on her father's scarf. What she couldn't have known then was that these tassels would someday support her family and help her empower other women. Of course, Ola is one of more than 200 home-based business entrepreneurs BLUMONT has worked with over the past 2 years in Jordan. Outside of the public sector, micro and small enterprises, including home-based businesses, are a primary engine of growth in Jordan. As of 2019, there were more than 12,000 home-based businesses in the kingdom, most of which were created and managed by women. The socio-economic situation in Jordan has changed since the Syrian conflict began. According to UNHCR, nearly 658,000 Syrian refugees lived in Jordan last year. A UN Women Reach report indicates that just 6% of Syrian women living here are working. The situation among Jordanians isn't any better. The unemployment rate is far higher for women than men, hovering between 24 and 27%. Many women and young people turn to the informal economy to make a living. While this can meet the immediate needs, people working outside the regulated economy are at risk of exploitation. To address these gaps, the government of Jordan streamlined the process through which home-based businesses can be formally registered and licensed. In addition, a decision was also issued to open this opportunity to Syrian refugees for the first time. Of course, the benefits of registration include eligibility for business loans and benefits, the ability to bid on local contracts, access to new markets. Registration also offers protection to business owners, but it is also a sign to consumers that a product meets established standards. Though the registration process was simplified, navigating approvals can be daunting. Supported by UNHCR and in collaboration with local NGOs, community-based organizations, and many governmental entities, BLUMONT set out to help. Working with existing home-based businesses, we aim to bring them into the formal economy with registration, provide mentorship and training, and expanding market opportunities. In the first 5 months of the Jordan Livelihood Program, we helped more than 110 home-based business owners register with the government. And among those was the first home-based business registered by a Syrian refugee, an achievement BLUMONT is truly proud of. The business owner's name is Kauthar, and she had fled Syria with her husband and 6 children. After the family's tailoring business was robbed, they fell in debt, and so Kauthar turned to pickles. Working with the Jordan Livelihood Program, she registered her homemade pickle business and built her marketing skills. With these new opportunities, she expanded sales to the point that she could help pay off the family's $15,000 JD debt, which is more than $21,000 US. That is a lot of pickles. Also, Ola, who has been sewing tassels on scarves for as long as she can remember, turned her passion into an income. A fully licensed home-based business, her products are now sold online via SUQFan, a Jordanian site like the US site Etsy. While Ola was excited when she first saw her products online, what she is most proud of is that she has been able to hire 10 women to work with her. Helping other women and teaching them to be professionals in such craftsmanship is my true achievement, she said. Whether focused on foods, handicrafts, or other products, or even home services, home-based businesses are changing the lives of Jordanian and Syrian families. The benefits of investing in these entrepreneurs go beyond economics. People across the kingdom have the spirit and the drive to build their businesses. We can help create opportunities for them to succeed. So the next time you are shopping, consider a product from a home-based business in Jordan. It really makes a difference. Thank you.